Awesome. Thank you so much for the introduction. So yes, I want to start by just giving you a little bit of background on myself. So my name is Katherine Hague. I actually live most of the time in Toronto, but travel around quite a lot. I've been to China a number of times in the last year, spent a lot of time here in New York, and as I'm sure many of you do, head out to San Francisco quite a lot as well. And my journey really started with ShopLocket. And ShopLocket is a service that's still available today. It's an e-commerce platform for hardware entrepreneurs to sell their products online. So think about going on Kickstarter and then coming off and thinking, where do I sell this next? How do I keep up the momentum from that crowdfunding campaign? That's where ShopLocket comes in. We help you take pre-orders on your own website after that crowdfunding campaign to keep up the momentum and switch it into regular orders when you're ready. And ShopLocket really taught us that there's a lot of interesting challenges that this new breed of company that sells things before they ship things have really emerged to discover. And we started interviewing a lot of these entrepreneurs so that we could publish their interviews and put them out there for other entrepreneurs to see. We noticed that the way that most information was really traveling, and this was about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, in the industry was all through sitting down with someone who had done crowdfunding before or who had started a hardware company before and just getting as much information out of them as possible. And I thought if I could just have these copies instead and publish them online, then maybe I can help a whole bunch of people be a little bit more efficient. And that's what we did through ShopLocket, and we created a ton of different resources for entrepreneurs. And about 8 months ago, ShopLocket sold to PCH. And as part of PCH, what we've done is we've launched something called the Blueprint. And the Blueprint was something that we had always wanted to do as ShopLocket. We wanted to open up the network of amazing hardware companies that we saw as ShopLocket for consumers to see. And that's what the Blueprint is. It's a consumer destination where you can discover some of the products that have sold on ShopLocket, that go through PCH's innovation platform. And to give you a little bit of background on PCH, PCH is a global manufacturing services company, to take it at the most simple level. You can imagine that they have thousands of employees in factories in China doing everything from helping large companies with the design portion through manufacturing and fulfillment and even packaging. The biggest names in hardware use PCH as their people on the ground. But PCH also, being still entrepreneur-led, it's about 20 years ago the company was founded, has a really soft spot for young entrepreneurs trying to get into the industry, be the next Beats, be the next Apple. And that's how they've started working so closely with the next generation of hardware entrepreneurs. And when they saw us and they saw the resources that we were using and the community that we were building for hardware entrepreneurs, they really saw that we could be the e-commerce platform to help them with their emerging group of hardware startups as well. So that's how I now fit into PCH, running the Blueprint and running ShopLocket under this larger umbrella, which also includes an incubator, includes PCH Access, which lets sort of a runway into getting the larger resources of companies. These are some of the people that we've worked with at ShopLocket or interviewed on our blog, sort of different ranges of hardware from wearables to smart home to just some really fun stories like Cards Against Humanity, which doesn't even fit into hardware but is a really interesting idea of a product going viral. And we've, in this process, collected about 200 articles very specific about how you create a hardware product, listed tools for hardware companies, maker spaces, and even indexed some of the top 1,500 startups in the hardware space. But all of that said, you can also find it all in our Launch Academy, which is available online. It's about 82 pages. It's sort of condensed all of our learning into one. Now that's a little bit of background about me and sort of how I've gotten into this industry and started working so much with makers and with hardware startups. But today I really wanted to focus specifically on wearables. This is something that's been sort of a fascination to me for quite some time, and I just wanted to walk you through some of my thoughts on the industry today. So wearables right now, there's tons of them. There's part for every single part of your body, from your head, it could be a brain-sensing headband, or the Oculus Rift, through to things for clothing, for your wrist, for basically every single part of your body. But it's gone even beyond that. It's gone into wearables for dogs, things like Whistle. It's wearables for babies, products like the Owlet, which helps you monitor your baby's sleep. But it's also gone into sports and very specific types of activities. The first product actually alerts you of drowning. It's a collar that you'd put on your kids when they were swimming. Whether that form factor makes the most sense, it's a really interesting idea. Things for tracking your progress in golf, being able to track your tennis swing. There's literally a wearable for everything, and I see more and more every single day going through accelerators and incubators and being submitted to be on the blueprint. But I'm very curious, especially in this audience of early adopters, who is actually wearing a wearable device today? Put up your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so less than 10 people in this room. And you notice I say phones don't count. I interview a lot of people, and one of the questions I ask is, what is your favorite connected device? And everyone says their phone. And for me, as someone that's trying to help new startups get into this space, that's sort of like, really, we have hundreds of cool, innovative new technologies coming out, but everyone can't think beyond their phone as to anything that they actually use on a regular basis. And I think that's one of the challenges we're really facing in wearables today. But now, beyond those 10 people that said they're actually wearing something, now who owns a wearable device that's not a fitness tracker? Anything. 1, 2, 3, 4. Out of curiosity, what do you have that's not a fitness tracker? A smartwatch. Smartwatch. OK, that makes sense. And honestly, when I ask this question, I get a lot of things that aren't even shipped yet. So there's a lot of people that think, well, I've bought it, I kind of own it. There's like a smart ring or the owlet, but they don't actually have it yet, which is, again, another problem facing this part of the industry. So today, what I really want to talk about is the public perception that's out there of wearables today, how I think companies are actually adapting to these public perceptions, and some predictions on the future of wearables as it relates to the consumer market. So first off, on public perception. We all hear this grandiose story of wearables and where it's going to go. Projections still say that it could grow to 91 million, up to 91 million from 48 million just in the next couple years. But that same stat says that it actually predicts that it could go down or cool off dramatically after that 2-year growth period, simply because the hype around wearables, they believe, is going to wear off. And that's coming from a lot of different things. I've talked to a lot of people around here, and a lot of the question is there true utility? Sure, there's a little bit of a gimmicky factor to it. Is it something I was saying earlier that you'd actually turn around and go back into the house if you forgot it? And a lot of wearables truly fail that test today. Is it doing more than just tracking? Is it more than just an ambient device? Is it actively integrated into your life? Is it more than just a single purpose device? I mean, we only have one wrist. What else can these devices do, or how can they work together? And is it something that you would actually wear? If you're wearing it, it's fashion. And what are the different aspects of that, and how do we think about it? Even the media is being incredibly harsh these days on wearables. This is a recent New York Times quote, basically referring them as incredibly ugly. The exact same thing was also recently in the Wall Street Journal. And this is what the mass market is seeing about wearable tech today. This is an interesting stat that we've seen ourselves on ShopLocket, is we hear all the hype, we hear the first month of all these cool startups, but the truth is, whether it's a wearable or honestly any hardware product, it's taking them 6 months to 2 years to match that first month sale just over time. And this comes from really being incredibly hard to go past the early adopter market into mass market. And I think there's going to be a lot of things needing to change to help companies better bridge that gap. So part of my thought is, sure, public perception is relatively negative. We don't necessarily know if these things are that useful. But I think entrepreneurs are incredibly smart, and I really do think that companies are trying to adapt to make things fit better into our lives. So I believe that just saying all of these products are ugly is a bit of an oversimplification. It's not necessarily true if you look deep enough into the market. And I also think that saying that all of these products should be beautiful is also not necessarily the case. So here's why I say that. I think that there are 3 stages of products that are currently out there in the market. The first stage, I think, is simply a technology proof of concept. And there's a lot of products that are in that category right now, and they're selling simply because of the technology and the newness of it. This is the Mayo. It's an armband that lets you sort of control the world around you, sort of Iron Man style. And I think that whether it's beautiful or not doesn't actually matter terribly for this product because it's such a novel new concept. People are buying it really as a more developer tool. Then there's the Oculus Rift. So it fits in the same category. Amazing technology. Sure, they're making efforts to make it beautiful, but really it's more about the novelness in the market. NIMI is another example of this. It uses your heart rate to detect identity. It's, again, getting it out into the market in some way, shape, or form for the purpose of technology. But I think that there's a second category here. There's products that have gone through that first phase, got that first set of orders, but now they've had to adapt because that product and that version of the product doesn't make sense for the mass market. So you look here. This was Lumo Body Tech. It's an amazing company based just out of San Francisco. This was their first product, and it helped you detect basically your posture using a strap that went around your waist. They noticed it was a little bit clunky for some people. It wasn't the form factor that seemed the mass market was going to adopt, but they ended up coming out with Lumo Lift. And Lumo Lift is simply a lapel pin that just looks like any of these different colors on the front of your jacket that serves the same purpose of detecting your posture. And this was their adaptation and has helped them move more into mass market. Love it or hate it, Google Glass has been actually working incredibly hard. They partnered with DVF to try to do new versions of glass that actually are more fashionable and more ready to move to mass market. Pebble is another great example. You have the first Pebble watch, and then they come out with the Pebble Steel, and you can see one of the main points of innovation that they focused on in Pebble Steel was simply look and feel and making it something that more people would actually wear and enjoy. And this is one of my favorite ones. I actually stopped wearing my Fitbit for charging reasons, but also just it not necessarily going with everything. And I'm incredibly excited for the Tory Burch collaboration that Fitbit's doing, which comes out at the end of October. It's not the best picture, but it's a gold jewelry band and also a necklace that will work with any Fitbit or Fitbit Flex that's out there today. And now this is the third type. I think that this is actually what new companies starting now are actually going to look like. They, from day one, had a hybrid of design and fashion knowledge, or at least excitement and understanding within their team, and they didn't have to go to Tory Burch, and they didn't have to go to DVF in order to get that onto their team. It's products like the Everpurse, which always charges your phone without having to plug it in, just in your bag. It's products like the Ringly, which is a ring designed to give notifications for women, very similar to how a Pebble watch would do it for men. There's Intel's Mika, which is a new project that just came out a few weeks ago, and it's a lot of the activity tracking into this more jewelry type form factor. And Cuff, which is actually more of a personal security device. All of these, from day one, have come out the gate with fashion and wearability in mind. So all of that said, my predictions for where all of this might be going. I really think that in a lot of categories, the technology is going to become quickly commoditized. We've already seen that in watches, in thermostats, in headphones. Really what matters now for these products is whether their brand or software differentiates them. You'll always have that group of new novel technologies that the beauty and the design doesn't matter as much because of the technology, but for everyone else entering an existing category, it's brand and software that's actually going to differentiate them. I also believe that we're going to see the development of new retail channels to help bridge the gap to mass market faster. If on day one people are designed and ready for mass market, then this is actually going to allow them to get there on day one. A small example of that is PCH actually recently partnered with Radio Shack to allow very favorable terms for startups wanting to get an innovation hub in multiple Radio Shack locations without having to go through the arduous process it would normally take to get into a large retailer like this. And I think we'll see that with a number of other retail channels and partners. I also think if you look at that last batch of products I showed that are these hybrid companies, they're really honestly just jewelry. And I got our entire team together yesterday because I was like, I can't think of a product that on day one was beautiful and well-designed and wearable, but that's not a jewelry company today. I think that this is going to change. I mean, you just look at all of the things that we wear and all of the things that are part of our life. I think that the next batch of companies, the next batch of iterations is not just going to be in a jewelry form factor. I don't know exactly what it will look like, but I think it'll be better integrated into the things we love and wear every day. This is another interesting one that I'm really fascinated to see where it goes. It's the emergence of seasons. I think we're really taking this from the fashion industry. Look at Pebble and Fresh Hot Fly, which is sort of their summer colors that they came out with for the watch. How much more of this are we going to see, and what's it going to mean for manufacturing? If, like fashion industries, we have to come out with new clothing, 2 or even 4 seasons a year, how much leaner do we have to become in our manufacturing processes in order to keep up with that type of consumer demand? So Pebble was the first really good example of this season emergence. And now just to leave you with a few final thoughts. If you haven't seen it already, it's available on Netflix. It's a documentary called Scatter My Ashes at Bergdorfs. It goes through basically how designers, fashion designers, get their products into Bergdorfs, the process of picking them, how you retail them, how those designers ultimately, stay in the store or leave the store. And if you watch it from the lens of imagining that these were hardware entrepreneurs or people trying to get into the Apple store, it's incredibly fascinating because I think we're going to turn very, very much into how designers are chosen in the same way of how we choose which hardware products are going to succeed. I'd also recommend that you read Tim Chang's A Wearable Startup's Playbook. This is an incredibly good article. It talks about things like how do you build a subscription plan into the sale of your hardware product on day one? How do you make sure you're doing more with data rather than just presenting it to someone? And how do you raise investment as a hardware startup? It's a really in-depth post and incredibly well done on TechCrunch. Now this is another one. If you're actually thinking of building one of these products, go to San Francisco. Go to China. If you haven't seen a production line in person and you're going out there and trying to raise money or build a product, you're doing it wrong. Get on a flight, go out there, it'll cost you maybe $2,000, and you'll learn so much, and the investment in your company will be absolutely massive. So go, it changed my view of the world entirely. And finally, I'd encourage you to go visit the Blueprint. We're curating a lot of these products, ones that we think are a great example of design and utility put together. We'd also love your suggestions of what you'd like to see from us. We're just 2 months old on this new site, so we'd love to hear some of your thoughts as we move forward. So thank you very much. Hopefully taught you a little bit about what's happening in wearables. So thank you.